Welcome back, listeners, to the Red Shirts Fantasy Football Podcast, live on Periscope on your Twitter feed at Red Shirts FF Pod. It is Matthew Betz. It is Matt Okada. It is John Helmkamp. And we're all rocking backwards hats tonight because no one can get a damn haircut and we look ridiculous. So here we are on screen for you, and no one's going to see my hair until this quarantine is over or until I can get some clippers. But outside of that, man, I'm excited to talk tonight. We're talking Dynasty Wide Receiver rankings. We've been running through those on the site. Started with quarterbacks, went to running backs. Now we're on to wide receivers. And boys, there's some spicy takes on tonight's show. So I am super excited to get into that. Before we do, let's check in with the co-host, Okada. How are things going out there in California?
They are going. I've almost moved into this apartment that I was sitting in the corner of over the weekend doing streams with you guys. It was quite insane.
Oh, it's beautiful.
But it's pulling together. It's pulling together. I found some shirts, so I'm not wearing a tank top now. That's
I'm disappointed, to be honest. I am disappointed in the lack of tank top.
My hair is also a mess. I think we should do something, guys, where we find something we disagree on in regards to the draft and make a bet, and whoever loses it has to shave their head. That's that's just a win-win. You don't have to worry about the hat. You got the shaved head. We can all laugh at you.
No.
Right.
I don't know if that's a win-win. I think that's a win for whoever makes the bet. It's a huge loss for everyone watching and for us.
It's great though, because if I ended up having to shave my head, I would just still wear the hat, so literally nothing would change. It wouldn't change at all.
Yeah. John, how's it going tonight, man? You have a much clearer picture. If anyone else has never been on our live stream before, John upgraded his camera a ton. Beautiful face is shining right through the screen at me. How's it going?
Very smexy.
It's great. You can really see the glisten in my beard now, which is fantastic. It's a huge upgrade. I'm loving it. I started back to work yesterday for the first time in a month. So optimistic about the future outlook of our economy since I was actually hired back. So that's a good thing. So doing the whole working from home thing like so many, and that's a new game changer for sure. But I'm very happy to be back and working. I'm happy to have an upgraded camera to do this with you hooligans, and we are so close to the NFL draft. I'm getting
it is coming.
So eager.
I would just like to state for the record that the real difference you can see with John's camera is his chest hair, which you can now see if he tilts his head up. You could never see that before.
Oh, it's there.
Everyone watching on Periscope and watching the replay on YouTube, I am so sorry.
I'm not.
Man, we lost a lot of listeners right there.
I'm not sorry at all.
Not sorry. All right, boys, let's get into some football content. Before we do, remind everyone you can find us online, redshirtsfantasyfootball.com. Our dynasty ranks are there. Articles are up there. Everything you need for fantasy football is there. Find us on social media at RedshirtsFFPod on every platform, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. All right, fellas, let's get into the news.
I got great news, guys.
Hey, news.
Christian McCaffrey, my Lord.
Oh,
he got paid. We talked about it with Austin Eckler, and I said, man, he got paid. And Christian McCaffrey said, no, I got paid. He is now the highest paid running back in the NFL, about $16 million per year, extended through 2025, which sounds crazy to even say. Fellas, we had our Dynasty running back ranking show just last week. He was our top running back for obvious reasons. Let's talk about more of a long-term outlook here, though, for the team, because they're making moves. They're spending money. They bring in Teddy Bridgewater, who's 28, I believe, pay him a pretty good amount of money. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey. Previously, I was in the camp that I thought maybe they were ready to tank and just rebuild this thing from the ground up because that defense is atrocious. But they're paying Christian McCaffrey. It doesn't make sense. What can you guys tell me about what's going on there in Carolina?
I don't know if I really am a huge fan of this method because you already had New Orleans in that division. Drew Brees is not going to let you win the division easily anytime soon. Now you have Tom Brady in that division running a very talented Bucs team. Finishing third is solid for the Panthers in that division with those two teams. So trying to go all in right now, paying an extremely large amount of money to your running back, doesn't necessarily feel like the move for me for success for that organization. However, for fantasy, I don't really care how well the Panthers do overall. In fact, if they do poorly, it probably means more catches for Christian McCaffrey as they play catch up all the time. So it's certainly good for CMC. It's probably good for the offense in general, just to know that they've got him locked up and they can build around him however they need to. So not bad.
Yeah, I think when it comes to the whole air quotes running backs don't matter and air quote argument, a lot of that is when you're talking about running backs that can't do what Christian McCaffrey does. I think to me, he's the outlier because one, I think his game is going to age very well. And two, he's an absolute freak when it comes to receiving the ball as well. I mean, he puts up wide receiver 1 numbers along with his running back 1 numbers all in one position. So the overall production that he provides to your offense for the money, I think makes sense because they're going to end up paying DJ Moore, I'm sure soon within the next, I don't know how long he's got left, but I would expect it to be in the next year or so that he's going to, 1 to maybe 2.
2018 class, right? And they'll be able to use the 5th-year option on him.
They could do that. That's a possibility as well. But he'll kind of be next up. I don't know. I don't hate it because he's your team's wide receiver 2 as well. So the overall production that he provides to the offense is, I think, worth it for the value that they're getting that for. So I'm all for it. Obviously, if you're a CMC owner in fantasy and dynasty, you'll love it. You're just going to be excited to watch him continue to grow in the new system down there with Joe Brady and everything that he does to get the ball to running backs in space and line them up all over the field. It's going to be fun to watch.
Now, Betz, I want to throw this back your way. Paying him this amount of money, and to John's point, it can be justified if he's your RB1 and your wide receiver 2, or even 1, by the way, on a catches basis.
Yeah.
Is this going to be something where he starts to get worn down and can't hold up to that amount of touches every year? Do you think that there's anything in his history that would indicate any concern? Is it just no one can withstand that kind of workload? Or is Christian McCaffrey maybe a kind of guy who could just take 350 touches every year and be fun?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing in his injury history that worries me. So there's nothing that I'm saying that this is a bad move because of his injuries. But when you look at the landscape of running backs, we were just talking about it before we went live and recorded. Zeke's the only one that's really worked out so far, and it's probably still too early to even tell for that one. So I think time will tell. Running backs just don't hold up the way we want them to for years and years and years, especially if they're going to use him the way they did last year. It's fantastic for fantasy, of course, but that's not sustainable long term. I think, his skill set, like John was saying, is just so unique to be able to line up in the slot, to be able to catch the football out of the backfield, truly an offensive weapon. And if they continue to use him that way, as 2 or 3 years go by, I think they can make the contract last longer, so to speak. But if they keep giving him 350 touches, I don't know that'll hold up that long. Nothing against him. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, 403 last year, by the way. 326 year before. Gosh. He led the league with 403 in 2019.
Absolutely unreal.
That's not
touches.
That's quite a bit. I just reminded myself of something, by the way, before we move on into our rankings. We are doing a live stream for the NFL Draft Round 1. Unfortunately, Okada's going to be slaving away at the network.
Boo.
Working to watch football. We don't feel bad for you. No, we do. But John and I are going to hold it down. We're going to broadcast Round 1 live on Periscope, probably live on YouTube as well. But the reason I mentioned that is because we are doing a contest for the draft, which we will announce the full details of in a day or two, probably, but we'll announce it a little bit here. We're going to do a guess the top 10 picks in the NFL draft in the correct order. And we'll put out a tweet about it and how to enter and all that stuff. But I want to say that because we're on camera and we are giving away one of these bad boys.
Oh,
a brand spanking new. There we go.
Wow.
Red shirts. Oh, there we go.
Fantasy football colors.
Just hold it still.
Yeah, hold it still. Mug, which you can have for free. So we'll put the details out there on how to enter here in the next day or so. All right, boys, we're into the wide receiver rankings. Coming in at number 1 in our consensus ranks, no surprise, it is Michael Thomas, the PPR machine down in New Orleans. Guys, what is there to say? I mean, 3 straight seasons over 100 receptions, so consistent, just so locked in as the top option for Drew Brees in that Sean Payton offense. There's so much to love about Michael Thomas. I don't know that we really need to touch on how good of a player he is. Can you poke any holes in his game or maybe in his dynasty value, given that Drew Brees is now, 40 years old?
It would be easier to poke holes in that if he didn't do pretty much just as well with Teddy Bridgewater last year as he did with Brees. And a lot of that honestly comes from the fact that Michael Thomas's game, and this is going to maybe sound demeaning to him, but it really isn't. He's not the best receiver in the league. His game is predicated off a very specific kind of offensive system, a specific kind of route tree and shorter area targets, and then doing great things with the ball in his hands and catching literally everything thrown at him so that your completion percentage, if you're targeting him, is 90%. And it doesn't matter if you're hitting him for 30 yards because all you have to do is hit him 3 times for 10 yards. And that adds up to 30 yards. Yes. The point being, it's not it's not like a Mike Evans or a Mike Williams kind of receiver production where you need a guy with a good arm. You need a guy who can make big throws. For Michael Thomas, Derek Carr could support Michael Thomas with 130 receptions and wide receiver 1 fantasy season. Andy Dalton could probably do it. It takes a competent quarterback. And so maybe more than anybody else, and that's honestly one of the reasons he gets to number 1 is because of the safety of that. I feel okay about his future, even though his veteran QB's career may be coming to an end, because I think that whoever slides in there, and I don't think it'll be Taysom Hill, by the way, will be sufficient.
Yeah.
John says yes.
I mean, that's all there is to say. He's as bulletproof a wide receiver as you could ask for right now. Future situations might change. We don't always know what to expect of that or what that's going to look like. But even if you only have 1 more year of Drew Brees, and that's literally the only question mark for me, is quarterback play. Even though it doesn't matter a lot because of how he contributes, which I understand that. But even if his quarterback play does change, I think that he's still able to contribute in such a variety of ways that it's not really going to matter all that much. So yeah, he's a locked and loaded stud of a wide receiver that can flourish with anyone under center. So I'm really not all that concerned about it at this time.
Yeah, nothing much more to say for me. The guy's a stud. What is there to say? On to number 2 in our consensus ranks, Tyreek Hill. Cheetah over there for Kansas City Chiefs. Pat Mahomes, top option. Okada, you've got him at 2. John, you've got him at 2. I'm apparently a hater. I've got him at 4.
How dare you?
How dare I?
I mean, to be fair, I also am not a fan of Tyreek Hill. However, you hate him even more.
Yes. Well, hey, I love the player. I do not like the person. However, we're here to talk fantasy, and if you're Pat Mahomes' top option, that means a ton. He plays in the best offense in the league. He catches the football from the best quarterback in the league. The only reason I have him at 4 versus 2 or 3 is just because I prefer the guys that are a spot or 2 higher than him in my ranks, and we'll get to those guys in a second. I honestly can't say much negative about Tyreek Hill. He comes in at number 2 for a reason for us. Man, that offense, unreal. And the nice thing about it for fantasy, nothing is changing. The exact same weapons are back. Pat Mahomes is back. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, DeMarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman. It's the exact same team, and it makes it easy to project. So given what we've seen from Tyreek Hill in the last 2 or 3 years, I mean, I think he's locked in as a top 3 to 4 option, regardless of how you rank these guys. So, fellas, let's chat a little bit more about maybe any off-the-field concerns that you guys have. I think that's the only really question mark I have about Tyreek Hill.
I mean, we've talked about it a little bit with Tyreek, with other guys. Once you have even one incident, but certainly if you have multiple, it does typically make me a little bit concerned about recurring issues down the line. And we've seen that for a lot of players. They just can't seem to shake those kinds of issues. And it's certainly a possibility for Tyreek Hill. And it's honestly enough that if you, and maybe this is part of Betz, your rankings, but if you feel like him and the guy we have at 3 and the guy we have at 4 are all in the same place and you just need a tiebreaker, I wouldn't hate you know, somebody using that stuff as a tiebreaker because it could have an impact. Having said that, I don't think it is going to anytime in the very near future. I see it continuing along how it's been this past year, which is relatively incidentless. Hopefully that is the case for him and for, you know, anyone around him. And as long as he is on the field, he is a monster. He will absolutely destroy for fantasy. He will be Patrick Mahomes' best weapon for years to come. And I want him on my fantasy rosters regardless.
Yeah. We all know that Tyreek Hill, listen, I don't, when we're talking fantasy football, we're not condoning the person as an individual, just period, blanket statement. This has nothing to do with personality or anything when we're ranking him this high. I do not like Tyreek Hill as a person. He's gotten into some trouble, seemed to have potentially gotten away with something that he shouldn't have. Whatever. We can't value that in fantasy. Sorry about that. Don't know what that crackling noise was. Anyways, when it comes to Tyreek Hill, he is the best big play player in all of football. One catch can save your week. He can be blanketed by one of the best defenders in the NFL, but if he can get one and get loose, he's gone. And it's a 60-yard touchdown, and there's your, 12 points on one play, 13 points.
Throw up the deuces, and you're good.
Yeah, throwing it up, and he's gone. So, to me, his ability to create from literally nothing, and I've owned him in leagues over the last couple of years, and you'll be watching a game, and it's halfway through the third quarter, and he might have been shut out. Like, I think against New England, he was shut out until midway in the third quarter. And then I'm just sitting there, I'm just going, I just need one. I just need one. And he did it. He got one and housed it, and it saves your week. So, but he also gets the volume to support a higher floor as well. He has some down weeks, every receiver does, but I think that his upside in that offense, his ability to just house everything, is so unique in this league. And he's stronger than people give him credit for. He has better hands than people give him credit for. He's a better technician than people give him credit for. He's not just straight line speed. He is a good receiver that runs good routes, has good hands, wins contested catches. He can leap like crazy. He's a total deal. So I can't really put stock into off the field stuff. I'm ranking him assuming that that's done. And maybe that comes back to bite me, but I can't figure out a way to quantify that potential when there's nothing immediately pressing. Like there's nothing that's currently lurking or no rumors or anything like that. I just have to rank him assuming that he's going to be a guy that's on the field for 16 games. Well, 17 in a year.
Ooh, fair point. More fantasy points. Love it.
More fantasy.
Yes. Yeah. You spoke to the fact that he's not really that gadget guy anymore, which I think is a huge, important thing to speak about, because I remember last year or 2 years ago, I don't remember exactly when it was, Okada, you remember we had Kevin Steele on the show?
Yes, I do. Friend. I was just thinking about it when John was talking.
And he was talking about how Tyreek Hill is a true one. And I remember I was like, I don't know, man. We haven't seen it yet. Is he going to be that? And, kudos to Tyreek Hill. He certainly is. He's a very nuanced route runner, strong hands, everything you said, John. Can't argue at all. All right, boys, we are on to number 3 in the consensus ranks. I have Davante Adams ahead of Tyreek Hill, but he comes in at 3 in our consensus ranks. Guys, last year it was a down season, relatively speaking. Only caught 5 touchdown passes, missed about a month or so with turf toe, came back strong at the end of the season and made a solid late run in the playoffs for the Packers. I feel so confident in this statement. I put it out on Twitter today. Dude,
yeah, you did.
Davante Adams is going to lead the league in receiving touchdowns. When you look back at his historical data, 10, 12, 13 receiving touchdowns year after year after year, and then 5, and then how efficient Aaron Jones was inside the 10-yard line. I think Jones takes a step back. I think Adams takes a huge step forward, or even just goes back to what he's used to doing. And then the depth chart for the receivers is disgusting. You have
Until
Jay
the draft.
Sternberger at tight end. Yeah,
Maybe.
fair. But even so, like Rodgers, he's not going to trust a rookie. You have Jay Sternberger, who's done nothing so far. You have Jake Kummerow, who's a preseason all-star. You have Devin Funchess, my favorite player in the NFL for how average he is. And you have Alan Lazard. Like, how is Davante Adams not going to absolutely eat this year? That's why I have him just a step above. I love this guy, man. So much chemistry with Aaron Rodgers in the red zone.
Yep.
He's a touchdown machine. What is there to say?
Okay, so I have something to propose, and it's kind of a chicken and the egg situation, so maybe it's a little bit hard to figure out exactly. But I just pulled up Aaron Rodgers' numbers, not Davante Adams, but Aaron Rodgers. The reason I did that is because I don't think a quarterback's touchdown numbers are as fluky as a receiver or a running back's, because he captains the whole offense. Going back to 2011 when he had his MVP season, these are his 16-game or full season touchdown numbers. 45, 39, 38, 31, 40. And then the last 2 years, 25 and 26. And it has coincided with the rise of Aaron Jones. And 2 years ago, Jamal Williams was also pretty involved. But last year it was all Aaron Jones, 16, I think, rushing touchdowns. I am a little bit concerned that the Packers have figured out how to win without putting everything on Aaron Rodgers, and it's working, and Aaron Jones is very, very, very good. And Jamal Williams is also decent too, by the way. And I do worry that if Aaron Rodgers' numbers don't get backed up to 35 passing touchdowns, that it's going to be harder for Davante Adams to get back up to 15. Now, if you tell me I have to pick 3 guys to get 10 touchdowns, he's probably still going to be one of them. And that's the reason he's still at 3. But it wouldn't surprise me if we don't see 15 a year from him, like it kind of seemed that we might a little earlier in his career, really just before last year. That's my one kind of gripe. Other than that, everything else you said, Bet's 100% true. Elite talent, elite situation. It's all good.
Yeah, I'm in the exact same boat as Okada. They have figured out that they have a very, very, very good defensive front, and they are very happy playing really, really good defense and running the ball and not having Rodgers sling it all over the field. They're learning how to win with a quarterback that's starting to age a little bit and not have him throw for 5,000 yards and 40 touchdowns. So I'm with you. But again, I still have him at 3. I still think that he's in a fantastic situation with maybe not the highest ceiling in the league, but a really high floor. And I think that he's still going to get a ton of volume. I still think he's a double-digit touchdown guy on talent alone. So yeah, he's still my wide receiver 3. But again, I think it's a higher floor than higher ceiling situation. If you told me he finished at wide receiver 5 to 7, I'd be comfortable with that, as opposed to some other wide receivers where the variance is super high. Like, I don't need to draft the wide receiver that's going to be the wide receiver 1. I need a guy that is going to consistently give me production week after week. You know what I mean? So I'm totally good with Davante Adams. He's my wide receiver 3 as well.
Perfect. Good to have a little pushback there, I suppose, on Adams, at least kind of just a little, just to kind of think about all range of outcomes there with Adams. So that's good. On to our number 4, Kyler Murray's newest weapon. DeAndre Hopkins comes in at number 4 in our consensus ranks. And guys, I don't know what to say. It just feels like that's low. You know what I mean? Like, it's just so usual to put Hopkins either at 1 or 2. Maybe it changes year to year, but 4 seems low. And honestly, it's just because there's a little bit unknown as to how things are going to mesh in Arizona. You know, he leaves behind one of the most predictable situations in the entire NFL, about a 30% target share year after year with Deshaun Watson. So now he has a new offensive system to learn, a new quarterback who we're very high on here on the show, but a new quarterback nonetheless. And now with all the craziness of what's going on with the coronavirus, how much time will they have to gel? We'll see. Regardless, he's one of the best receivers in the NFL. Some will say he is the best receiver in the NFL. Absolutely unreal. Fellas, if let's say that we used to be able to count on a 30% target share about for Hopkins in Houston. If we give him less, where do you think he comes in at that range there? Is it like 25? Is it 20? Like, how big of a hit do you guys see him taking when he goes to Arizona?
I see him taking No, I definitely see him taking a hit percentage-wise. And it could be, I would guess it will be as high as like 5 to 8%. Which puts him down at 22 to 25. Having said that, I think there's a decent chance that the Cardinals throw, I don't know, 50, 70 more attempts than the Texans did, maybe more. Right. And if they do that, math is hard, but he doesn't lose that many targets theoretically. Right. So that, which is actually something I'm thinking about right now. Like I probably will need to look into that. And I'm sure at some point a little later this year, we'll start doing our projections like Betz and I did last year. And we'll kind of see how this works out for us with these offenses. But it may not surprise me if you do not see his target numbers drop that much, maybe 10 or 20 targets, which it might be a lot for a guy who's getting 100. He's dropping down to 80. But for a guy who's getting 160 and he's dropping down to 140, that still leaves you in elite wide receiver territory. He's still going to be another one of those threats for 10 touchdowns alongside Davante Adams. And he's still arguably the best talent in the league. So I kind of actually wanted to drop him lower than this. Yeah. Coming in the post-trade re-rankings, I was like, I'm going to have to get him down to 7 somehow or something. And I just couldn't do it.
Yeah, same. This was the lowest that I could push him. And I'm really concerned about the lack of offseason program, the ability to get chemistry there with Kyler Murray. It's really difficult for a wide receiver to change teams in a normal offseason. And this is not a normal offseason. So This is going to be interesting. I mean, I thought Odell Beckham Jr. was going to be locked and loaded for, top 3 production last year with Kyler. With Baker. And that didn't happen. So I think it's going to come down to how quickly does Kyler Murray trust him? Like, the thing about Deshaun Watson is that he knew, like, without a shadow of a doubt, if I put the ball anywhere near DeAndre Hopkins, whether he's covered or not, he's going to make a catch or stop a defender from picking it. And Kyler needs to get the same level of trust with him to let him know, like, if he's covered, he's not covered. Like, you need to get the ball to DeAndre Hopkins. So watching the two of them adjust is going to be really interesting to me. He might be a fantastic buy low candidate in September. Tell you that much, but I still think, I have him as being the most talented wide receiver in the NFL. That's how I view him. I agree.
Yeah,
not a hot take.
Talent standpoint. Yeah.
Yep.
Talented wide receiver in the NFL. It's just going to be a matter of how they mesh and learn that system together, that air raid offense. So I still love DeAndre Hopkins. And again, this is a dynasty ranking, which is why I'm not too concerned about the slow start that they might get off to, because eventually they're going to figure it out. And eventually they're going to be one of the most potent duos in the NFL.
Yeah, we were just talking about meshing with Kyler, and it made me think of this quote. I saw it on, I think it was Bleacher Report's Instagram. There was a quote of of DeAndre Hopkins. They asked him basically, like, how difficult is it going to be with what's going on in our country to get over there and, like, learn the playbook and get with Kyler. He said something along the lines of, like, if I did it with Brock Osweiler, I'm good. Kind of
oh, savage!
Like, savage. Just an absolute shot at Brock. But he's got a fair point, man. If he can do it with those guys, he can do it with anyone. And certainly, we like Kyler a lot. So on to number 5, boys. This is where it kind of gets interesting. Chris Godwin comes in at wide receiver 5 in our rankings. Officially jumps Mike Evans in the dynasty ranks. Chris Godwin, what a season, guys, last year. Like, it was one of those scenarios where if you didn't buy into the hype, you were too late. Because I can't remember in fantasy a wide receiver or any player being as hyped as people were for Chris Godwin last year. And man, did it come true. He came out and set the world on fire. What a perfect situation, though, right? Like, Jameis did not care at all. Chucked the ball deep, willy-nilly, like eyes closed, whatever, and threw a bunch of pick sixes. And I don't think we can undersell how important that was for wide receiver production. Not only Mike Evans, but also Chris Godwin. last year. Like the system was perfect. They could not stop anyone as a defense through the air. So the scores were always high scoring. Jameis is coming out, chucking the ball deep, throwing picks, throwing touchdowns, whatever. Like it was just so perfect. Can the same thing happen with Tom Brady in Tampa? I don't know that it will. I have my concerns, my hesitations about the offense as a whole now. It's going to change a ton. But Chris Godwin is a talent. And certainly we like Bruce Arians there a lot.
Here's what I learned by it. I learned that I should always trust Bruce Arians. Because he was all in hyping Chris Godwin in the preseason last year. He was
him in fantasy for sure.
Oh yeah, he took his own player in fantasy. He was all in on Chris Godwin, saying, "This is my next Larry Fitzgerald. He's gonna get 150 targets." He's like, when all of us are sitting here, like, who's this Chris Godwin guy? If you're not like really deeply in the know. So many people had no idea who Chris Godwin was, and then suddenly he's going to be a wide receiver 1 and have 150 targets. And guess what? He was right, and he was an absolute stud. Looked the part. He's crazy athletic, great hands, great routes, good speed. Like he's a talent. He's real, and I think so. We've talked about Brady, coming to Tampa Bay now for a month or whatever it's been. I think at first I was really, really pessimistic. And like, if you go back and you listen to those episodes, I was like, oh man, hold up. He's going to just completely ruin this offense. There's not going to be enough to go around. He's not going to support, the kind of numbers that Jameis put up last year. And no, he's not going to throw the same amount of numbers. But I'm starting to think that it might not be as far off as I originally thought that it was going to be. Like I originally was saying, like, this could
Tom
be
Brady a top 3 option this year.
I'm not going to say top 3, but does Tom Brady finish in top 12 in the quarterback position? I think it's entirely possible with the weapons that he has at his disposal. That could really happen. He didn't have Jack to throw to last year, and his numbers weren't all that far off. I just don't know that it's going to be as huge a downturn as I thought it was going to be. I'm pulling up Tom Brady's numbers right now so that I can have something to reference here. I need just 2 seconds. So in 2019, 4,057 yards for 24 touchdowns and 8 picks. So Jameis threw for 5,033 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom threw for over 4 and 24 with Jack Crap as his wide receivers. If you tell me that with the weapons and with Bruce Arians' system that he comes in and throws for 45 and close to 30, I'm not going to argue that. Like, I think it's entirely possible that he does. So I'm starting to come around more to the fact that I don't think that this is a death sentence for that offense, that he still has enough left in the tank. And with the weapons that he has and their ability to create after the catch, that this might not be a death blow to that offense. I think Chris Godwin maintains his value as being a top half wide receiver 1 option.
Yeah, real quick, I'm just going to put a comment up that we had here in the show. Clizzid, I think that's how you say that, _C, says Godwin is Edelman 2.0.
He's better
on that.
He's definitely better than Edelman. So 2.0 is 3.0. But yes, he is going to be more the guy to play that Edelman role, whereas Evans is going to play the Gronkowski role. Like, you can't even compare it to a Patriots player because they haven't had a guy like Mike Evans, at least for a very long time. But what I really want to hit home on is kind of what John was bringing up. Like, and this is getting a little more into Brady even than Godwin, but it does really affect Evans, who, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about in a second.
Well, let's just talk about him now with the whole situation. Because we have him at 7.
So are we? Is he next?
No,
they back to
more
back? Okay, we're skipping 6. All right,
we'll come back to 6. But
all right.
It makes
spoiler
sense
alert,
to talk
Mike
about
Evans
it all
7. It does.
As one big unit.
Here's the thing. Like, this is not going from bottom of the league receiving core to a nice, decent receiving core like the Seahawks or the Bengals if AJ Green is healthy. And this is not going from one of those situations.
First and foremost, how dare you put DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in the same
I was
combo
just thinking
as
that
the
too.
They are not an elite duo. They are a very good duo. They're okay. They're a little above average.
Anyways, I digress.
Anyways, This is the worst. I mean, Eagles, Raiders, and Patriots probably were the worst receiving cores in the entire NFL. And the Raiders had Darren Waller, and the Eagles had Zach Ertz. So, like, take the wide receivers and the tight ends together, and you probably got the worst weapons in the league for New England last year. And arguably the best. The Chiefs are up there, and the Buccaneers are there. That is the gap we're talking about for Tom Brady. It is a 31-team jump in terms of the talent that he's got. John's making a tiny little thing.
Especially if they draft him a pass-catching running back. That's all I'm going
to say. Yes. The Buccaneers didn't even have a good running game to complement that passing game. 100% true. So, and Brady didn't have a great running game either, by the way, in New England. So, if all those things come together and you add that on top of a guy who has pretty much been successful every year of his career, still threw for 4,000 yards like John brought up with that awful receiving core, no, I don't think he's going to throw for 5,000 yards. I do think he could easily throw for 33 touchdowns. That is not out of the realm of possibility. And I do think he could throw for 4,300, 4,400 yards and really surprise. So if he is able to do that because of that jump in talent, his talent, and this is the chicken and the egg situation, will thrive also. And that's where I think not only can Godwin be my 4, but Evans can be my 6, which is actually higher on both of those guys than our consensus is. And that's probably because I believe in Brady maybe a little bit too much. But regardless, they can both be extremely productive.
Yeah, I'll go right to Mike Evans on that. And just I've got Evans as my 9. So still finishing inside the top 10 at the position, just because we haven't seen Brady sustain 2 fantasy relevant wide receivers because he hasn't had the talent that he has now. So I'm just really curious what it's going to look like when he has 2 really, really talented wide receivers that are, pretty different. A lot of people think that Mike Evans just eats on the deep ball, and he is very, very good at that. And I've brought up how I thought that Brady might struggle a little bit there potentially. But what Brady does better than Jameis is think. And he's actually really, think, and he's really good. But he knows football inside and out. There's not a defensive scheme you're going to throw at him that he hasn't seen before. He's seen it all. He's carved it all up before in his career. So his ability, I think, to manipulate defenses and get Evans open deep is going to happen. And he doesn't have to have his, 25-year-old arm to make that happen. And he's never had a fantastic arm. He's never been the guy that comes in with an absolute cannon. He's been someone that thinks his way through football games. So I think that he will be able to get Evans open and manipulate defense as well. I think that Bruce Arians' offense is going to allow both to do very well. Evans has the lower floor of the 2 just because I think that Godwin is going to eat so much more on the intermediate, short, quick hitting stuff than I think they're going to give to Evans. So I think that Evans is going to be slightly more big play dependent than Godwin, which is why I have him lower. But they're both very talented wide receivers. Both absolutely could finish inside the top 12 at the position.
Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself. That's the reason I have Godwin higher. It's the reason that I trust Godwin a lot more, especially for this season and, maybe next year. Of course, he's only there on a 2-year deal, Tom Brady. But there's something to say about Mike Evans, man. So underrated. We have to talk about him as a player too, because it's not just Brady. I mean, Mike Evans literally has never had less than 1,000 yards receiving in his entire career. So consistent. No one respects him that way. So yeah, you're telling me that he gets a better, smarter quarterback. Maybe the game scripts aren't as good. I still think it's going to kind of level out, right? It's like quantity versus quality of the targets they're going to see. Yeah. And I think it's going to be okay. I pretty much echo exactly what John said. Initially, I was scared shitless for Mike Evans. Sorry, that's family-friendly show. I was terrified for Mike Evans. And now I thought about it more, and I think it's actually going to be okay for him. I think they're going to both be fine fantasy options. I just prefer Godwin, who played about 60% of his snaps last year in the slot, as opposed to Mike Evans, who was on the perimeter almost exclusively. So that's the difference for me, but I think both are going to be very good fantasy options.
Now do the right thing and draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Please. Please put CEH in that offense. Please.
Make it happen. It would be fantastic. All right, boys. We're going to now go from 7 to 6, which we didn't plan to do, but hey, here we are. Before we do, though, I want to remind everyone about the sponsor of tonight's show. We can't thank them enough for sponsoring us. That is Nuts and More. nutsandmore.com/redshirts is the place to go for your peanut butters, your almond butters, your guilty pleasure, so to speak. Guys, listen, we're stuck inside our house. True. It sucks going to the grocery store now. No one wants to do that. So when you go to nutsandmore.com/redshirts, use the code redshirts. You're going to get 15% off your order today. I use this product. Their products are so good. They're delicious. It kind of feels like you're eating dessert, but it's healthy for you, which is the best thing, especially when we're all stuck at our computer, not moving at all. So go on over, check it out, nutsandmore.com/redshirts. Code redshirts gets you 15% off your order today. All right, boys, on to number 6 in our ranks here, Amari Cooper.
Yeah.
Now, this is a point of contention. John and I both have him at 6. Okada has him at 10. So if it wasn't for John and I, Amari would be way lower. Okada, I'm going to kick it over to you, man. Why are you hating on Amari?
Listen, I like my
anytime Okada starts with listen, it's going to be a diatribe.
I like my wide receiver ones to be reliable and consistent. Something that is the antithesis of Amari Cooper. He is the least consistent, wackiest receiver. He is Cooper Kupp on crack, where he will have massive games and then disappear. Yeah. And last year, and it's actually since he's come to the Cowboys, it's been starkly home road, which maybe is good because it means you just put him in your lineup when he's at home and don't win when he's on the road. But the problem is he's Amari Cooper, he's a wide receiver 1, and you can't put him on your bench just because he's on the road. But I did pull up the numbers really quick because I had to. So let me just ask you guys, all right? He had 1,200 receiving yards last year. Give me the percentage split, like 55-45, 60-40, that you think he was home road.
Well, 72. Because you're saying it that way, it's got to be more.
What'd you say, John?
72.
73-27.
Nice. Yeah.
Disgusting. His top 7 games, every game that he had 85-plus yards, were at home. And I don't know what it is, if it's a under the lights, if it's a performance thing, if it's a mental thing. He did deal with a lot of mental drops earlier in his career. I remember with the Raiders that contributed to his inconsistency back then. So maybe he's just a guy who, like, some days he's not feeling it and some days he is. And if he's at Cowboys Stadium, he's feeling it a little more. I don't really know. What I know is that at the end of the year, Amari Cooper is going to be a top 10 receiver. He's not going to be a top 6 receiver, by the way. He wasn't last year, and I don't expect him to be again. But he will be a top 10 receiver, probably. But the problem is that he will hurt you many, many weeks by putting up 40 yards and no touchdowns, which is not what you want to see from your wide receiver 1. I want to see a 60, 65, 70-yard baseline the majority of games from my guys that I'm sliding in, especially if I'm putting him as a top 6 fantasy receiver. So I am quite low in him, obviously, down at 10. Obviously, relatively speaking to the rest of the entire fantasy, group of wide receivers, that's very high, but he's much lower than you guys have him. So that's really my main issue. I think they're going to re-sign Dak, so that's not really part of my concern. I just want more consistency.
Yeah, I'll say that for me, they're bringing in Mike McCarthy, who has done a really, really good job of supporting elite wide receivers for fantasy purposes. Jordy Nelson, and then the transition to Davante Adams, who had a bajillion and a half touchdowns for like 2 years in a row. So I don't know. I agree with everything that you're saying. I don't disagree with any of it. I think that his upside is so good. I think that he's such a good tactician. I think that he's so dirty at route running. He's unreal. Really good. He's really good when he gets the ball in space. NFL Network has been showing old red zones for the last week. I was watching that, and he had one play down the sideline where he caught it, spun out of one defender. Safety was coming across, literally put the brakes on him. Safety went flying off to the sideline, and he scampers in untouched. And both commentators are like, wow. His ability is amazing. I want to see the consistency improve completely. And I'm kind of hoping that a change at coaching will help with that a little bit. So I don't know. I'm very boom bust on him as well. Like I had a hard time with ranking him because I very easily could have put him down around 10. But yeah, I mean, right now, according to fantasyfootballcalculator.com, his ADP is currently at round 2, pick 12, which means that, yeah, you're drafting him at the turn as probably your wide receiver 1 because you probably had the 1.01 and you're not taking a wide receiver right there unless you inexplicably went Michael Thomas instead of like CMC. So yeah, you're taking like a CMC and then going at the turn with him being your wide receiver 1. It's dodgy. It's tough. So there is a little bit of concern there and hesitation, but I'm just kind of banking on talent and kind of hoping that the coaching might smooth out some of the consistency problems.
Yeah, those are all very fair points. And honestly, like when you look back at Amari Cooper's track record, I mean, just listen to his resume, like 4 Pro Bowl appearances in 5 seasons. He's still not even 26 years old. He turns 26 in June. 4 1,000-yard receiving yard seasons in his career. Like, it just sounds like a guy that you would be like, yep, no question, he's a top 5 option in Dynasty. Don't even think about it. But like Okada's saying, the concerns are real. And I think my ranking of him at 6, I agree, John, I could have put him 7, 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there. But I think my ranking at 6 bakes in his upside with his year-long consistency. But I agree, man, those week-to-week spikes kill you in fantasy, and they're so frustrating. So in redraft, I am almost team never Amari. But in Dynasty, I'm still really, really interested in this guy. The talent is just undeniable. If he can put a full season together, if he can excel on the road, the sky's the limit with Dak there in Dallas.
Couple more quick things I just kind of noted to myself while you guys were talking. One is, Betz, when you're reading off his resume and his great yardage seasons, one of the big problems is I can't get a guy to number 6 who never scores touchdowns. Like, he's had 6, 7 touchdowns most of the seasons in his career. His max was 8 last year, so maybe hopefully it stays that high, his highest ever with Dak and the Cowboys. But before that, it was 6, 5, 7, 7, 6. I want my guy to be 8 floor with 9, 10, 11, 12 upside if I'm going to get in this high, probably in my wide receiver rankings, or at least be putting out like 14, 1,500 yards, which he is certainly capable of doing, but mostly he's hovered more in that 1,200 yard range. The other thing I will bring up, because I just checked really quick with our rankings, is Michael Gallup. I'm the highest on Michael Gallup of the 3 of us. I have him at 21. Betz, you hate his guts. You have him at 31. John has him at 25. I think that maybe I see Michael Gallup as more of a threat to be a 1B, or maybe even to pull a Chris Godwin to Cooper's Mike Evans in the coming years. And that may affect my ranking of Cooper a little bit. Do you guys have any concerns about Gallup? Do you think he's going to threaten Cooper at all?
Yeah, I'm really not.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, I think that he's fine. I think that he's a good 2. I'm not in the camp that thinks that he's a 1, which is, in my opinion, completely fine. Like, not every wide receiver has to be or will be a wide receiver 1. I think that he's a good asset to have for your fantasy roster as an ascending wide receiver 2 potentially, but I don't see him as taking over number 1 duties. I just don't see it. So I think that he's a strong wide receiver 2, but not a 1 type. I mean, I don't have, like, I need to go back and look at my rankings, but in my head, I don't see Michael Gallup as being all that different to Mike Williams, except with like a little bit more explosiveness. Like, their overall ceiling to me, I think, is pretty similar. And I don't think we've seen Mike Williams' ceiling. I'm not saying like that he's seen his ceiling yet either, but I have those 2 like fairly close in my mind. I just don't see him as being someone that's going to come in and command a massive target share and go off for 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think those are valid concerns. For me, I agree. Gallup is a perfect 2. And if Amari wasn't still 25 years old, I'd be like, all right, maybe they could switch. But we still have 6, 7, 8 years of Amari being in his prime. So I'm not going to rank Gallup ahead of Amari until I see it, and not even come close to them. I'm not saying that you rank them ahead, but come close to Amari until we see that start to change. So I'm still optimistic on Amari, given the age and given the production so far. One other guy in our ranks here that doesn't score touchdowns, but you said Amari doesn't really have that 1,500, 1,600 yard season in him. Julio freaking Jones.
Julio Jones.
Julio Jones.
Number 8, which is kind of crazy to say. Like Julio Jones, right? He's old. No one wants him. He's 31. But on red shirts, we do not care. Julio Jones is a top 10 receiver in the NFL until he's not. And guys, I don't really know what else there is to say about him. I mean, so consistent. I put this in the article that's up on the website. His finishes at the wide receiver position over the last 5 seasons: wide receiver 4, wide receiver 7, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 8, wide receiver 1. Like,
oh my gosh.
Until he doesn't do it, you got to rank him there, even if he is 31 years old. Any concerns from you guys? It doesn't really sound like it to me.
No, in fact, when I did an initial post-Brady move rankings update, I slapped Julio Jones down to, like, I want to say 10 or 12 or something. I was like, this guy's old. He's 31 years old. Get him out of my face. We're moving on. We're moving on to A.J. Brown. And then I came back and I said, I'm sorry, Julio.
I'm sorry, Julio.
Forgive me, please. I got to 7, which is the highest of any of us. And it's because I can't do anything differently. Like, you just read off his finishes. He never finishes worse than that. Yeah. If I had a guy who hovered around 7, like 4 to 10, 6 to 11, I would still like to feel good about putting him at 7. This is a guy that is 1, 4, 5, 7, 8. It's insane. And yes, he is 31. But number one, he has not showed any signs of slowing at all. He's still a monstrosity. I think he is in the conversation with DeAndre Hopkins for best wide receiver in the league, just like all around most dominant.
Agreed.
And the Falcons believe in him too. They signed him to an extension through 2023. That's 4 more dynasty seasons, counting this year, of production from Julio Jones. And I mean, is he going to get 1,500 yards at age 34? Probably not. But is he still going to be
I'm not counting it out.
It certainly could be.
Yeah.
And is he still going to be a high-end wide receiver 2 or low-end wide receiver 1 at that point, 4 years from now, after having another 2 or 3 wide receiver 1 seasons at least until then? Yes, I feel very confident that he is. And that is too much sure goodness on my fantasy roster to put him any lower than 7.
Yeah, while everyone around you is doing their dynasty startups and going youth movement and trying to figure out which one of last year's rookie wide receivers is going to be the next Megatron, just slow down and realize that you're not planning a dynasty roster for more than 3 years from now for the most part anyways, because you can always trade. Take Julio. Take the sure thing. He's already he's already what you're hoping those guys are going to get to. Mm-hmm. He's already it. And he's it until he's not. And it's going to be another 3-4 years at least, I think, of seeing this kind of insane athletic production. Now, I will say the only thing about Julio is he has some games where he just disappears. Like, there are the occasional one-off game where I feel like he gets 1 catch for 9 yards. Like, every once in a while, it's a couple times a season that you're like, where the hell did Julio just go? Like, where'd my wide receiver 1 disappear to?
He'll explode next week for 234 yards.
Exactly. Yes. That's the thing, though. Like, if he does that, it's never back-to-back. And I think he almost gets mad at himself. And he's like, screw that. I'm not getting shut down 2 weeks in a row. And then he goes off for like a 300-yard receiving game. It's mayhem. He is top of the mountain with DeAndre Hopkins from most talented wide receiver in the league.
Just really quick to speak to that, because it was interesting and I had to pull it up because it was one of the things I didn't mention about Amari Cooper. What you said about Julio, I think is something we all kind of have in the back of our minds, like he does do that. Last year, he had 2 games below 50 receiving yards. One of them was 30-something. So that it's not great, Bob. You don't feel good when you're Julio Jones doing that. Amari Cooper did that 7 times, less than 50 yards. Like, and you actually feel bad about Julio sometimes.
All right, I'm changing my rankings.
That's what I'm saying, man. It is rough with Cooper. Anyways, we can move on.
I'm literally putting Julio over Cooper right now.
Let's go.
I mean, I'm just reading the sentence. Yeah, peer pressure is real. I'm just reading what I wrote on the website, like verbatim. Despite finishing as wide receiver 9 on the season, Cooper has 7 weeks as wide receiver 30 or worse in fantasy. Yeah.
Okay, I won't change our rankings. I won't change our rankings yet because the article's based on consensus and I'll mess it up.
I'll change
by
it.
changing them. Oh, okay, cool. All right,
You're good. You're good. Update it. All right, boys. We're on to number 9 in the consensus ranks. This one's going to be a good discussion.
Ooh.
Juju Smith-Schuster.
Hey, yeah.
Now, there are 2 schools of thought with Juju. You can either believe last year was a fluke because Big Ben was hurt for almost the entire season. Mason Rudolph was trash. Devlin Hodges was trash. Or you can say Juju isn't a 1. And like John said, that's fine for some wide receivers. So, fellas, I'm gonna give my stance and I'll kick it over to you. I'm in the belief that Juju is an elite talent at wide receiver. I am in the belief that what he did at his age does not happen in normal wide receivers. Now, granted, he was playing alongside arguably the best wide receiver of the decade in Antonio Brown in his couple years there in Pittsburgh. But I think with Ben back, I think Juju rises back to the occasion. He also missed 4 games last year because of injury. So, Juju is an enigma a bit in Dynasty. You either have to be in on this guy or out, because I think if you're in and you don't buy him now, it's going to be way too late. So I'm in on Juju. I have him as my wide receiver 7. I'm the highest. Let's go to Okada because he's my best friend and he has him at 8. John hates his guts and has him at 15.
Thank you.
No, yeah, because he has him at 8, and you have.
We're saving you. We're saving you for last, John, because you have a shamefully low ranking.
It's not
so this is kind of what it boils down to for me. In his second year in the league, at the ripe young age of 22 years old, Juju Smith-Schuster had 111 catches for 1,426 yards and 7 touchdowns. Now, you can say all you want that Juju is a guy who is made by having AB across from him, and he can't be a 1 on his own.
And I will say this.
And his numbers were inflated by AB. And there are some merits to parts of those arguments, but on the most part, they're doo-doo butt. And here's why. If Juju had 1,100 yards and 6 touchdowns on 95 catches with AB across from him in his second year at the age of 22, I would buy that. What he did was not that. What he did was above elite status receiving numbers. What he did was Randy Moss when Chris Carter was already on the team. Julio Jones when Roddy White was already on the team. Juju has more of a likelihood of being in those guys' tier for me because of the talent that I see in him on tape than he does of being one and done wide receiver 2 who gets matched by Deontay Johnson from now until the end of his career. It was just too good, and he is just too good for me to put all of those numbers on Antonio Brown, or even enough of those numbers on Antonio Brown to where I don't believe Juju can do it on his own as well. So I am 100% in the buy Juju now camp. If whoever owns him in your league says, I told you Juju couldn't be a 1, I don't know why I have him on my team if I said that, but and you believe that it's Big Ben that's the difference, which is what I believe, go get him. But if you want to listen to John's argument on why you shouldn't, you can do that now. Or you could mute the podcast for the next minute or 2, which is probably what you should do.
Just hit the fast forward 30 seconds.
Yeah, the skip 30.
Be good.
There you go.
All right. Well, y'all are terrible. I'll tell you what. I need
Juju Smith-Schuster on your dynasty roster?
No.
Yes, you do.
No, I'm not getting him. I'm not getting him on my roster right now. I actually had someone just offer him to me, and I didn't want it. So here's the thing. So here's where I'm at when it comes to Juju Smith-Schuster. I have him ranked as 15. I'm not ranking him at 30. I'm not saying the dude.
That's pretty close.
Okay,
15
halfway.
is pretty close to 30.
I'm not saying it's halfway, dude. I'm not saying that he is what he was last year. I'm not saying that he is, because last year I don't even know what his finish was. Awful.
Terrible.
I think he was in the 40s.
Yeah.
I think it was in the 40s. It was bad. I'm not saying he is what he was last year, but here's where I'm struggling to delineate all of the different points of data, because a couple years ago, you had a healthy Ben Roethlisberger. You had a healthy and prolific Le'Veon Bell. You had a healthy 65.
Yes, 65. He missed a lot of games. On a per game basis, he was higher than that. I'll get you the per game number. You continue talking.
Work on that. He had a healthy and prolific Ben Roethlisberger, a healthy and prolific Le'Veon Bell, an elite offensive line. He had prime Antonio Brown absolutely raking on the other side. That offense as a whole was probably the best offense in the NFL in 2018. It was absolutely cooking. The defense had to worry about so many different options between Lev Bell running routes and Antonio Brown consuming double or triple coverage that he was facing like the third best coverage person on the team every single week. You take away Antonio Brown, you take away Le'Veon Bell, and I was already concerned about going into last year. And then we see all the injuries at the quarterback position, his own injuries and all that. So everything compounded at once. So what I'm struggling to figure out is I don't think he was what we saw in 2018. I don't think he is what we saw last year, but I don't have him getting back to 2018. That's what I'm saying. I think that he is an incredibly talented young wide receiver. He's still very, very young and will continue to develop in this league. But he went from facing like the third coverage person on a team to facing the lockdown person on every team that they faced with terrible quarterback play and his own injuries. So is he going to bounce back? Yes, he will. He's not going to be the 65th wide receiver in fantasy football production. No, he's not. I think that calling him wide receiver 15 is fine. That's a high-end wide receiver too. What's wrong with that? I don't think that's a problem in the least. You're both wrong.
Here's what I would say. I would say that putting him at 15 in redraft, I could maybe buy a little bit because it's just one season after that horrible season, and you don't know how far up he's going to get this season. And so you need like a little bit of a cushion for yourself to let him get back. But this guy is 23 years old. The dynasty pump that you have to slap onto that wide receiver 15 number, I feel like has to get him a little bit higher.
I don't know if Ben Roethlisberger is back at all yet. He's still not cleared. He can't get in to see their doctors. I don't know what. Okay, cool. That's nice of you to say. He hasn't seen their doctors.
Speaking about his injury,
okay, great. Is he going to be full strength? Is he going to look the same as he did 2 years ago with an elite 1A?
Well, he doesn't look good
maybe
at all
a little
right
fatter. Yeah,
he looks terrible right now. So even if he's healthy and back, is he the same as he was when he had an elite 1A and 1B option? Oh, and an elite running back. Oh, and an elite offensive line. No, he's not going to put up the same numbers that he used to. I don't know what their quarterback of the future is going to look like. I don't know how much longer Ben Roethlisberger is playing. I still don't know how much Juju benefited just from having Antonio Brown on the other side. If he comes out this year and can't put up wide receiver 1 numbers with Ben Roethlisberger back in the system, and we don't know how much longer Ben's going to play there, then I'm really concerned about his dynasty outlook. And listen, he's going to carry that name value. I know I'm not buying him because everyone's got him higher than I do. Everybody. I'm never going to be able to trade for him in a way that I would feel good about right now. So, yes, to me, he's off my board because of price. I'm not taking him where he's going, and I'm not trading for him because of what people want for him. I think that he's a middle wide receiver 2 with maybe some potential future upside, maybe possibly.
Okay, I have to put this out there. It'll be a while until it can be followed up on, but a wide receiver 11 would be halfway between the two of us. If Big Ben stays healthy all year and Juju stays healthy all year, and Juju is better than wide receiver 11, John has to shave his head. And if he's worse than wide receiver 11, me and Betz both have to shave our heads. Who's it?
Oh, God. Full shave, like clean razor shave.
Buzz cut.
Or buzz. Okay.
Yeah, buzz cut.
I was going to say, I don't know if I can do that.
You guys understand that we would be completing this bet when the season's over in January.
Yes, it'll be a long time. Someone's going to have to write it down.
It'll be cold.
Vermont at that time.
It's not cold where I am.
Not here too, baby.
I'm in. Let's do it.
To lose here.
I will put up, I'm not doing a shave bet, but I will put up a wager of a different kind.
We'll talk off pod.
We will
settle
talk
it after the pod.
Yep.
Man, this is it's the most fascinating player I think in Dynasty to rank because it's our biggest disagreement. even at the running back position, we were pretty much in simpatico with all those guys. Maybe not Nick Chubb, but this is huge in terms of dynasty ranks. Like, it's usually pretty close for a lot of people, but yeah, Juju is an enigma. Are you cool and you think he's coming back like me and Okada, or are you a nerd like John who's out and will miss out on getting Juju at low value? We will see. All right, boys, on to our next receiver here. Coming in at number 10, a guy who, like John said, we all thought was going to be awesome last year, had top 5 wide receiver written all over him, Odell Beckham Jr. Now, there was a lot wrong in Cleveland last year. A lot. The offense fell apart. The entire team fell apart because of poor coaching with Freddie Kitchens. He lost the locker room, so to speak. Odell banged up with that core muscle injury, has since had surgery. Fellas, let's talk about Odell, because I think we can all agree his talent is easily higher than this as a wide receiver.
Yep.
But there's some legit concerns about Odell that I feel like not a lot of people really talk about. I mean, a lot of injuries over the last few seasons. I don't think there's any real trend with them. I'm not going to call him injury prone, but he's had the core muscle injury. He's had the fibula fracture. He's had the contusion in his quad, the hamstring strain. Like, there's a lot that's piling up. It seems to be fluky, but it's still there. He also hasn't topped 6 receiving touchdowns since 2016 when he had 10. So are we buying a bounce back from the Browns offense? Do we think Odell is still that elite talent? What do you guys think about Odell here coming in at 10 in our ranks?
He's another tough one, man.
He's tough.
For me, he's kind of like Juju is, where the range of outcomes could be so high based on different things. Now, what's interesting is it's kind of opposite scenario here, because no one has any concerns that Odell is extremely, extremely talented and can be a 1. What we have concerns about is that organization. Maybe Odell's injury history has sapped some of his strength. I don't know if that's necessarily one of the main concerns, but it's hard to explain what has happened to him. Like 3 years ago, we were talking about this guy as the 101 in a dynasty startup.
Hall of Fame talent. When he was a couple
gold
years
jacket
back.
lock.
Yeah.
Every year, all pro. He was going to break Randy Moss type records. And then he's just suffered a bunch of injuries.
I got to take a phone call real quick. Hold on.
Do it.
No worries.
He suffered a bunch of injuries. He's got shipped off to a just floundering Cleveland Browns organization, and it has been rough. For me, I'm trusting the talent for one more year. I have him at 9. It's the highest of any of the 3 of us. I think he is so good, and I think that there is a good chance that the Browns get turned around a little bit with the new coaching situation, finally moving on not only from Hugh Jackson 2 years ago, but now from the Freddie Kitchens attempted experiment gap thing that did not work at all. I think this offense bounces back. I don't think it maybe is what we all had hoped it would be last year, which was like a top 3 offense in the league, but I think it gets good enough and Baker takes a little bit of a step forward enough that it can support Odell as the top 5 talent he is and make him a top 10 fantasy receiver. However, I will say if he does not, I might be out forever.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, he'll have enough opportunity, or he's had enough opportunity, I should say, to have proved himself as that type of player in this league, and he has at times, but it hasn't been consistent. I will say, no, I was talking about Odell, but I was going to talk about Baker. I buy the bounce back. I do. There's a reason we were all so excited about this offense last year, and it got thrown away because the coaching staff was horrendous. In steps Kevin Stefanski. And is he the best head coach ever? We don't know. He hasn't really been a head coach yet, but he's been an offensive coordinator, and he has been someone that runs 12 personnel a ton. This offense is set up perfectly to run that system. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, Baker Mayfield led the NFL in quarterbacks who improved their completion percentage when throwing from play action versus not. Yeah. They run so much play action with Kevin Stefanski's system. I'm buying the bounce back, and maybe I'll get burned by it, but I'm buying it. I think Odell bounces back. I hedge my ranking a little bit with that being said, because there are question marks and there is concern, but I'm buying the bounce back. John, what about you?
Yeah, I hedged it even further. I think because I have him the lowest, I'm at 13. So the last 2, I'm the lowest on both those wide receivers. Again, incredibly elite talent as a wide receiver. When fully healthy, I mean, from a pure talent perspective, might be top 5 at the wide receiver position.
Yeah,
in the
I'd
NFL.
say top 3 with Julio and DeAndre, honestly.
Potentially, yeah. I'd put Michael Thomas maybe above him, but he's right there. He's in the conversation. But again, it just seems like year after year, there's been some sort of issue or off the field drama or proposing to kicking nets or getting hurt or whatever it is. There's something every year, something. When he went to Cleveland last offseason, I absolutely loved it because in Baker's rookie season, he was incredibly accurate on the deep ball. He looked great on deep throws. Like I did a little dig in on the stats. Very accurate deep ball thrower. I loved that for Odell and his big play ability. And we know that Baker, going back to college, has been a very accurate passer. What does Odell feast on? Slant routes, ball out in front of him that he can catch in space and take it. And I thought that those opportunities would be there for him, and last year sucked. So I think that Stefanski's system comes in, and again, he has a very balanced duo of wide receivers. He had Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs, and now he has Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham Jr. Diggs and Thielen were both really good for fantasy. I think that Jarvis and Odell could be really good for fantasy too. But my big hang up right now is on Baker. How much confidence has he lost since coming into the league after having a terrible year last year? Now has to learn another system, now has to learn new language, new formations, reading defenses differently. So that's a little bit why I have Odell lower, combined with what just seems to be always something off the field with Odell.
Yeah, it's a fair point. You know, there's definitely reasons to question it, and that kind of is why he comes in at 10 in our ranks here for consensus. All right, boys, that was a great show. I mean, not to pat ourselves on the back, but that was a great show. Lots of good discussion, lots of good debate about those rankings. If you want to see more of our rankings, head on over to the website, redshirtsfantasyfootball.com, rankings article, podcast, etc., all up there. And check out the Patreon, patreon.com/redshirtspod. You get an extra podcast, you get extra bonus resources, access to the Slack channel, maybe joining a Dynasty League with other patrons. The possibilities are endless, and it's just a few bucks a month. All right, boys, we're going to get out of here. Until next time, we are the Red Shirts.